Hey team, welcome to another edition of the Rugby League Lounge Weekly Show. Once again, joined by Joel from League of Inches. Bit of a last minute call up this week. I had something kind of lined up, but it fell through last minute. And Joel, he never disappoints. He come in for the save. So appreciate that once again, Joel. How are you doing, my friend?
Oh, mate, 18th man, there was a warm up and there was an injury, and I've been called up. So, always I'll do it for you. No worries at all. But mate, I've been good. I've been really good actually. And I've actually been good from an outside of rugby league point of view in terms of I'm a massive Manchester United fan. So obviously I've been swept up in Ronaldo fever the last week, and I woke up on the Friday. I was up at the Friday night when it first came through that he was going to sign, and then it just seemed to drag out for a few days. And you always have that little inkling in your mind with when it comes to soccer transfers, or maybe it's not happening. Maybe something's happened and it's just not the case. But then it's just been confirmed. The interviews that come out, we've seen him in the jersey, and I tell you what, it's so good. It just makes you realise that there's a lot of massive sports stars out there, and I don't think there's any bigger than Ronaldo. So I've been swept up in Ronaldo fever.
Yeah, I can't blame you for that, mate. I was a bit confused over the weekend because I went to university a couple of years ago, and the majority of my mates, in terms of sporting, soccer is their sport, and messages were just flying, out of all ends, and they were saying, yeah, Ronaldo, the man U, and I was like, hang on, I thought it was basically done deal with Manchester City, but obviously. It didn't work out that way, and and it's been hectic in terms of Messi going to PSG. I think that Mbappe was meant to go to Real Madrid, and that fell through too. So even though I don't watch football as closely as I used to, it's still interesting to see where these superstars are landing. And actually, it's probably a really good segue, mate, because today, like I said, we kind of have thrown this together real last minute. It's probably, I messaged you probably 1 hour before this. So once again, thank you for that. And it's is about making decisions. And it's basically, we're going to make the call if, who would you rather from a couple different views. So we're comparing two players that have been, within the same team, same environment, and there's moves that have been made, moves that are just about to be made, and moves to be made into the future. So it's a little bit confusing to start off with, but I'll give you guys, we'll hit fire away after the first one. Now, this kind of come about because of the incident we had last weekend. I don't want to get into it too much. I know Joel has spoken about it on his video as well. It's about Latrell and Joey. But I just thought of the two athletes as a whole. Now, it made me think, because I think Joey is a sensational talent, but I shouldn't say he's been wasted, but there's more to be fulfilled there at the moment. And because he's been on the centre, but we know, for me, his best position is on the wing, or even as a number 6, as a roaming number 6. So this is the first question, Joel. Who would you rather sign up as your fullback? Would you rather have Latrell Mitchell, or we'd rather have Joey Manu? And also thinking now, they're relatively the same age too. We're not talking about right now. Well, we can talk about right now, but also thinking about having them for their whole career as well.
That's a tough one. It really is, because there's a lot of people out there that think Manu is becoming a fullback, and next contract, it's probably going to be in the fullback dollars and in a fullback position, depending on the club he ends up choosing to be with. And Latrell, for mine, he's had his best year, whether people like him or not after what happened on the weekend. But in saying that, his best performances have been at Origin, where he played centre. So it's a hard one, because I don't know if either of them, their best position is fullback. But if I'm choosing one to sign and to play fullback, I'm going to go Latrell, and I'm just going to hope that I can keep his head on and just train him and talk to him to help him manage his personal demons, I guess, while he's on the field a bit better, because it seems like every time someone has a bit of a go at him or tackles him and he doesn't like it, he seems to lose his marbles a bit. So that's why I think personally he's a better center than fullback, because he doesn't spend as much time in the game. He can pick and choose a bit better. Fullback, he has to sort of be in the game pretty much every set, whether it's attack or defense. So, but yeah, I think Latrell is a natural freak. He's got natural talent. No one can deny that. So you've got to choose him. But in saying that, I do love Manu as well. He's a tremendous player, and it's a very hard one. But I'm going to say Latrell by a neck.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting take, and I'm going to reverse here. I'm going to go with Joey, but we'll just talk about Latrell from the sense. I think you brought up a real good point, and obviously, yeah, like I said at the top, don't really want to get too much into what happened over the weekend, but it has been an issue in the past, just controlling that aggression. A couple of points have been made about that. He plays on the edge, which has got huge benefits, but it's obviously has got its cons as well. And also, you think it's back-to-back years where he has been ruled out of the finals. Now, obviously, injuries are kind of, it's a bit of bad luck. But I think he's still prone to a good injury or two. And obviously, Joey Manu is as well. We saw he got injured, but, I think everyone's going to get injured from collecting that collision as well. So that's something to throw in. And I think those things are least likely to happen. Injuries and those brain explosions when you are playing at centre, when you are less in the thick of the action as well. But I'll just go into my point about Joey. Look, I think I'm taking a risk here if I'm taking Joey, because even though we have seen a sample size and I've loved what he's done, we haven't seen a season-long, sample size from Joey. Where Latrell, even though there was question marks at the start last year, this is the second season, and like you said, he's playing the best footy of his career, and the finesse to go with the firepower is incredible. But for me, I just love Joey. I just love him on the field. I kind of love what he symbolizes as well. He just seems like a real nice character to have in your team. And he's a guy where realistically, if I was to sign him, I'd love to have him as fullback, but I'd shift him around as well. And I just think he's young enough where you got enough to kind of get the best out of him. So there might be some, growing pains at fullback for him. But just like Latrell, that's going to happen. And I think it's not like you're trying to change him at the back end of his career. You're doing it early enough. So for me, I'd go with Joey Manu. But I think, to be fair, it's probably one of the toughest arguments we're going to have today. But yeah, as you can see, we're split in our decision.
He actually reminds me of a player which is similar position, but he has Roger Tuivasa-Sheck like about him. So in terms of Roger obviously started on the wing and then transitioned to a fullback, I can see Manu going from centre and becoming a fullback. And I think at the start of the year, it looked like the Warriors were going to go hard for him, but that's obviously changed now with Reece Walsh coming on in leaps and bounds, and he'll be the future fullback for that club for some time. So, but if there's other clubs out there, I'm not sure off the top of my head who could probably need him, but someone like the Broncos maybe could use him as a star fullback. And he just, really reminds me of RTS in a lot of ways in terms of just how he holds himself. Really seems like that ultra professional. And basically, I can see the transition to fullback happening sooner rather than later.
There's 3 spots that stand out for me for Joey Manu, and one of them is the Broncos. The other one is actually and obviously there's been a bit of contract drama with Clint Gutherson, but look, if they really want to take to that next level, and there's always been arguments that, Para, they, as we know, they're sitting in that 4th to kind of 6th best team at the moment. They need a superstar, and they can get that in Joey. Now, they might have to overpay, but if they shift him to fullback, maybe play Guffer at the centre, that's an option as well. And the other option is, if this franchise comes about, this new franchise, I think he would be arguably my guy, the number one guy I target. There'd be obviously Cameron Munster's thrown his name as a potential suitor too, but Joey Manu for me would probably be at the top of my list if I am really being honest there. So we'll transition to the next one. Now, this is a decision that's already been made, and it's a guy that I thought was going to kind of have a dip in form this year. Now, he's kind of had a bit of a lackluster second half of the season, but other than that, he's proven me wrong. and a guy that I've always enjoyed, and obviously he's been swooped up from another club. So we're talking about Luai and Matt Burton. Now, from the Panthers' point of view, do you think they've made the right decision here, Joel?
Short answer, yes. Purely for the fact that Cleary and Luai have been playing together for years, that they basically grew up playing together. They've got the combination. They were the form combination for the last probably year and a half, close to 2 years before Cleary got injured, and then it sort of mucked up. I've got question marks over Burton's kicking game still and his game management. He just hasn't been tested as much. And I think there's been a few cases where he was in the halves for Penrith this year. Some of his kicks weren't great. Now he's got a great towering bomb, but you need to come up with some better game management style kicks. So your little grubbers and things like that. So he needs to adapt to that. Luai just, for mine, steps up and does the job so well. He has such a good running game. I'm a huge fan of Luai. I've been a huge fan of Luai for a number of years now, and I had him as the most underrated player. I think he's now finally getting the credit that he deserves, obviously with his New South Wales choices, and purely just because of that combination I talked about earlier. I have to say that they haven't made the wrong decision. I mean, what a luxury they had at the start of the year. They had choice of Dane Laurie, Burton, Luai, Cleary. Like, there's some absolute ridiculous talent there. And unfortunately, when you're one of the best breeding grounds in the game, you're going to lose some of these quality players. And I'd argue, will Burton look as good outside of the Penrith system? We're going to find out next year.
Yeah, I'm really optimistic on Burton. But out of all the situations to be in, he might be in the toughest. Look, I think you're correct. I think Luai was the right decision, especially what we saw, 17 wins in a row, and they obviously got done by the Storm in the grand final, and they carried on great form this year. It's been interesting to see that dynamic when Cleary's been out, and you make a good point about Matt Burton's, decision making and game management. But for me, I think it's also was like, who did we want to be making those crucial decisions? Do we want Burton, who maybe probably skill set wise has potential to do that more than Luai, or would you rather Luai do it because he has been playing first grade in the halves for this year? So it was probably a bit of both, in the sense that, like, even though, I think it's, fairly to kind of maybe put that as a critique for Burton, but was it for Luai to kind of maybe steer the team round? So I'm not too sure, but at the end of the day, it's always is going to be an issue losing the top tier guy at doing that in the competition, and Nathan Cleary. I just want to kind of continue on this one. Say the situation is Trent Barrett had the choice between Luai or Burton, and just any franchise in general. Like, if you had to choose one of these guys to be your number 6, would your answer change? Because I thought you brought up a really good point about the combination about Luai and Cleary, obviously being through the junior ranks together. And for me, it was kind of like that ultimately would be why I'd go with the decision that they made the right decision. So would your decision change if that was the question posed, if you had to choose one to build your team round?
Yeah, it would.
Yes,
I would have made the decision that they've made. I would have had Burton. He's younger. He's a bit more freelance with his play. He can do it without the combination. That's what he's going to have to do next year. Luai's been in the combination now and in that system for a while. I think that it showed that that's sort of they're just so good at what they do. They do it in clockwork, and they can do it with their eyes closed, Cleary and Luai. So I think they've gone after the right guy. He's a 6. He's on a halfback. He's a 6. Let's get that right. He can continue to do what he's doing good at centre at the 6. They run some good holes and then also set up. He just needs a good game managing halfback next year to make sure he can actually do what he's really good at.
Yeah, for sure. And we've talked about Cole Flanagan a lot. On paper, the best version of Cole Flanagan is that. On paper, it's just, is he going to get that? They might have to find a number 9 to do that as well. Yeah, like a Josh Hodgson would be great for them to start off with as well. But hey, look, I think we covered a lot there, and I completely agree. I'm a huge Matt Burton fan. Obviously, being a Storm fan, my favourite players predominantly are from the Storm, but look, he'd be right up there for me. Obviously, the Freddie comparison gets thrown around. It doesn't mean that he is as good as Freddie, but the similarities, that left foot step, that bigger body, the ability to play different positions, you can definitely see why that comparison gets thrown out there. Now, this is probably no one we could tack at two different angles, but it's Hines or it's talking about Nico Hines, obviously going to the Canela Sharks. He probably got a deal where he got paid unders now because he got paid before he had that little form stretch. And obviously they've chosen Pepe is going to be the fullback there. And then after the start of the season, you definitely can't blame them. But we're seeing how they've really struggled to get that flow back once Pepe's returned. So would you be questioning the decision made? Do you think that if they had to get rid of one, would you have kept Pepe or would have you still got rid of Hines? Or what way would have you leant?
I mean, it's another one of those situations where it's a luxury. It's mostly pros, whichever way they ended up choosing to go. For mine, there's not many cons at all. Asked me this question a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. I tell you, hands down, Pappy, you choose him, you go on with it. I'm actually pretty concerned at the moment with Pappenhausen. In regards to his comeback, and obviously it was a horrible knock or a couple of knocks he did get in quick succession. We don't like to see that at all, but he's sort of come back and he's like a shell of his old self. He's not doing what we know and love of Ryan Pappenhausen and how he played and why he was so good last year and the start of this year. Because the start of this year, he was the Tommy Turbo before Tommy Turbo came back on the scene. He was just crazy. So, and then in saying that, since he has been gone, I'd argue the Storm have played probably better football now as a whole when Hines was at fullback. So it's a really hard one for me because Hines has a bit more. He can play a few more positions. So he's got that utility X factor about him. He can play that 5/8 role. He can probably slot in a bit easier at, say, the centers. He obviously can play fullback. So he can play that. So I think Sharks have got a really good signing there because of that. And they're not pressured into having to put him into one position yet. They can play with him in the off season and see what happens. But Pappenhausen is a bit more strict with that because obviously he had at the start when he first came in onto the scene a 14 roving role where he'd come on when there was tiring forwards and he was so good at that. Start this year and last year he was the fullback. I don't know if he's got a 5/8 or halfback style in him. I think he's a basically just a proper fullback. And it's just a hard one because I love watching Pappy. It's just that, and I'm obviously a Para fan. I loved what we did on the weekend, but I feel like we wouldn't have won that if Hines was fullback. I feel like Hines would have been able to do enough to get him home. And I just don't like seeing Pappy not being the Pappy that we all love to watch at the moment. It is pretty heartbreaking to see because obviously it's really impacted him. And is it a case that the Storm maybe shouldn't have brought him back at all this year, let him get his confidence back fully? It's a crazy thing to say, but it was working at the time. It wasn't like you guys were on a 5-6 losing streak or something. It was working and you're winning by a heap. So I don't know if I've answered your question. I feel like I put more questions than answers, but I'll put it out there and say right now I'd be signing Nico Hines.
Okay, no, yeah, interesting. So probably to answer the question that I posed, I would still be signing Pepe and I would have been happy releasing Hines. At the end of the day, if we look at what Hines did the start of the round, what we've even seen from him last season, even when his rookie season, just the energy, the speed he produced, in terms of the potential, the X factor, look, it's on a different level to Hines. Now, the thing is, Hines, you made some good points. They've just, the skill set he's brung and just how the team's able to flow with him. Yeah, it can seem like Pepe can be sometimes a hard player than maybe to fit around your system. And we've seen at the moment, But I'm happy with the decision they made. The concussions, it's a huge issue. He looks a bit, he looked okay, and then I was a bit more concerned again this week. Like, I think it was last week, I was like, okay, he's looking a bit like himself. But and then it's one of those things. Obviously, we've seen Corden retire, Jake Friend retire. It's one of those things that hopefully, it's just a season, he can rest, and next season he's back and he's fully, himself. But it's not that simple. And it's just, I think it's just, you just got to be, it's just a lot of sense just to have that concern and not expect it to go away. You've kind of answered my question, though, that I will pose as well. But I think right now, like, if you, in terms of just what they should do now, look, I'm starting to lean towards them that they probably, and I don't blame them for trying to get Pepe back in there, because we forget how good Pepe was. Like, he was, rightfully or wrongly, pushing Teddy out of that fullback spot for New South Wales. Now, I think that was an overreaction, but he was playing that good. But in hindsight, they probably shouldn't have done that, but I don't blame them for doing that. I'd have Hines now probably at fullback and Pepe at 14. And I think you're kind of veering that way as well. Is that probably a fair point at looking at?
Yeah, I'm definitely for that. And it's one of those things where we're not here saying Pappy's lost it at all. Like,
No.
we want him back, and we believe he's obviously going to have a really bright future, but it's just a big worry at the moment that I'm hoping the off season he can just get away for a month or two and just completely get his mental side of the game back, because obviously that is spooking him, and that's understandable. But I feel like some clubs, and I'm surprised Bellamy got sucked into this, because he doesn't seem like the coach that would do this, but a lot of teams pick players from reputation and what they sort of had an idea of at the start of the year. So if we looked at the Storm's outfit at the start of the year, you obviously had Pappy on at fullback, and you had Grant starting at hooker. Now, on form, I don't think either of those players warrant being selected in that position at the moment. I'd have Smith as my hooker, and I'd have Hines as my fullback. That's just purely based on form. And I see a lot of clubs, more so down the bottom of the ladder, continually choose players because, back in 2020, they did this, or back in 2018, they did this, so they're going to do this again. But I feel like, especially this time of the season, and the confusing thing is Storm have such a display of richness when it comes to these positions. They've got so much quality, and sometimes that can get in the way and be a bit confusing. But I would be choosing Hines at the moment. And as I said, I'd have a serious conversation with Pappy about where is he at with things. And if he does need some time off from the game just to get his head back into it. Otherwise, as you said, I'd have him as the 14. And I guess you'd have probably Grant on the bench as well. You'd have to have both of them, and then manage to somehow put Smith to lock.
Yeah, that is the one thing. And the thing is, like, if you are going to use Pepe, and this is the one benefit of Pepe, like, even though we probably think Hines is more versatile in terms of the starting 13, Pepe is probably more versatile in terms of a bench utility role, because I think he is more of a game changer. So that is one positive. But like you said, you've got two guys like that. Can you afford to have two smaller guys? If any team
not coming into finals, I don't think you can. I think you need to have a 3 strong forward bench with one.
If any team can pull it off, though, it would
it's
there's any time of, like, the way the game is now, this would be the time to do it. Like, back in the day, no way, But I honestly reckon, mate, I reckon they'll veer that way. But yes, it will definitely have its drawbacks as well. But I think the peak value of it'll just be worth it, man. Like, it is going to be very tough. It is tough. But we'll move on to the next one. We'll spend a bit of time on that one, but obviously it opens up a lot of can of worms. It's been a huge talking point, so it's been able to get our thoughts on that. Now, this is a one where the decision's already been made. Two guys that were at the same club, obviously. And I want to kind of, I'm just trying to think how I frame this question, but I think I'm going to frame it this way because it's David Fifita and Payne Haas. Now, obviously, David Fifita got the big paycheck. He was paid, reportedly over $1 million. And Haas has been a bit of rumors about the length of the contract and how much he's getting paid. And there's been a bit of pushback. Apparently, it's not happening. There's a bit of drama around that. Now, this is probably how I'm going to ask it to you, Joel, is if you had to give one of these guys $1 million, like only one of these guys, you had to give him the big paycheck, who would you give it to? Fifita or Haas?
I'm giving it to Haas. And I know I've been really disappointed with David Fifita this year, and it might be a surprise to a lot of viewers and who might raise their eyebrows at that, but going, oh, he scored all these tries. Yeah, well done. He's targeted a lot of these weaker teams and run at the smallest bloke on the field and barged over and scored a try. Well done. But every time this year the Titans have had a hard game or played someone decent, he's gone missing. And you can't be giving your $1 million star forward that kind of money, and that happens. He needs to be the one in there taking those high runs. Now, look at the Broncos. They've had outside noise galore the last year and a half. Now, they obviously went away at the break mid-year, and they've had some hard truths, and Payne Haas has come back and literally led that club on his shoulders. He's the one taking pretty much 2 runs a set, carrying blokes. He's in the middle. He's doing it. Whoever he versus, he's doing it. I watched the other week against Penrith, and he was doing it, and they're arguably the best forward pack in the comp at the moment. So Payne Haas is doing exactly what you want from a top build player. I wouldn't even have David Fifita at the moment in the top 3 second rows in the game. And I know a lot of people out there have him as the form one, and I've seen some votes already come through with other pages or the NRL website with rating the players. But I'm just think that with that pay packet, it comes with it, the territory. And for mine, Fifita's been a really big disappointment. So I'm giving $1 million to Haas every day of the week.
Yeah, fair point. Now, the way I'll answer this question is like, if I had to, like, the thing is, so I look at Payne Haas, obviously a front row. How much do you give a front row? That's the conversation. Then we look at Fifita. What Fifita can bring is an absolute strike player. You know, yes, he has been disappointing, but the thing is, I don't know how many tries he's got there, but it's about 13, 14 tries this season, something like that. Ridiculous. It is just very frustrating because of the effort he brings in. And for me, if I'm looking at it that way, I'd rather have the guy that could break a game wide open rather than having a guy that is, so good at his position, top 10 position, but can I kind of replace it with something else? But just to go completely against that, I'm going to go with Haas because honestly, man, his work ethic and the way we view front rowers, he is going to be a game changer of how we view front rowers now. What I said was about, the impact that props have in game, I think has been limited in the past. So obviously, they get you a good go for, but how much do you want to pay them? Look, the way Payne Haas moves, the size that he brings, the work ethic, everything he brings is just, honestly, so young in his career, something we haven't seen before. Why I also used to be hesitant on Haas was, even though obviously young into his career, I haven't been happy with him at Origin level, and saw his impact get kind of minimised there. I think, at the end of the day, when he is coming up against those best players, he doesn't look that, that red hot. This year, he was sensational. He was so good. And look, at the end of the day, he's younger than us. I'm pretty I don't know how old he is exactly. Is he 20, 21? He's still got plenty of years in him, and he is changing the way the front, the value of the front rower. And maybe he's setting the standard so high that no one else can keep up with him. But yeah, for me, I've got to go with Haas. Those chase downs we see, just everything. And he is someone that I think makes other people better. Obviously, he's not a guy like a playmaker in terms of making other people better, but he's a guy that you see him making tackle after run, breaking tackles. You want to get up and play for that guy. With Fifita, he's, like you said, the way he has approached a good majority of his games, has been concerning. I still think it is actually a tough decision because, man, I think for Feeder, if he is able to, work on that concern of his game, he is a scary prospect. Like Haas, very young and with a lot of footy ahead of him as well. But I think, just to summarize, Haas would be the guy that we'd both choose to pay the big bucks to if we had to make that tough decision. It'll be interesting to see how the Broncos deal with that. Yeah, because it's been a bit of an interesting story and probably has been overshadowed from what's happened with Latrell. Now, there's another one, a decision that's going to have to be made. Well, the thing is, they could go unders, but let's say if both of them are asking for the big bucks, Harry Grant or Brandon Smith, if you're the Storm, who are you going to prioritise here? And we can also ask from the other sense, like if you're another club, is there one in particular that stands out in the other if you had to choose one of them? So who should the Storm keep? And then also, does your answer change if it's another club searching for these guys?
This is very difficult. So I actually want to know your side of it first, being the tragic Storm supporter here.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's obviously, we experienced already the realism of Brandon Smith almost leaving the club early in the year. So, and he's come on in leaps and bounds. So I'm very interested to hear your thoughts first, and then I'll come back with a rebuttal.
One of the highlights of the year for me has actually been Brandon Smith, how he is actually kind of proven me wrong to an extent, proven a lot of people wrong, where I was starting to think his best position was kind of a bench player or 13. But at the end of the day, like when you get more reps in that position, your body's obviously going to get accustomed to it. You're going to get, you're going to get the hang of it, how it works. And obviously we knew he had the hooker position, but I just thought he added more value as a forward, as a 13, but he has really, he's the hook of the year this year. He's been fantastic. But for me, I think Harry Grant is the best hooker in the game. And it's been interesting to see how they're being used. I thought if one was going to be bench, one was going to be start, I would have said Brandon Smith would be bench and Harry Grant would be start. My view has completely changed. And obviously that's what they've done this year. They've had Smith as a 9 and Grant come off the bench because I thought, no, they need that kind of energy off the bench, but they actually need that energy from the get-go, set the standard early, and then Harry Grant can come on. And even though you wouldn't kind of label him as finesse per se, but he is so good that he does have such a range. He's got that a bit more finesse than Smith, so he can, when forwards are tight, he's able to use his speed and explosiveness that he has. And he has got a bit more subtlety to Smith as well, where Smith just comes out here, the bulldog, after time as well. So it's really interesting. Now, at the start of the year, I would have easily said Grant, but I still think I would veer towards Harry Grant. But it is so tough. I just think Harry Grant, like I said about that finesse, even though it probably doesn't stand out as like kind of the best asset of his game, but I think he is so talented that I just think I'd just go with, it is really tough. But the thing with Harry Grant and Brandon Smith is the full 80, at the end of the day, that combination works so well because they play so high energy. You bring one on, the other one comes off. And then they can also play, like we know, both at the same time. So, it is so tough, but I'd go with Harry Grant. I do like the ball playing ability he brings and just what he's done early on. This is only his second season. Health is a concern, obviously. Look, Harry Grant. I'm a huge Harry Grant man. I'm a huge Brandon Smith man, but it pains me to say that I think if I had to choose one or the other, it'd be Harry Grant.
Yeah, well, this question is asked me at the start of the year. I pretty much laugh and just say Harry Grant every day of the week.
Yeah.
And it's a similar situation to your fullbacks situation at the moment. It's that right now, if I was the new Brisbane team and I'm coming in next year and I've got to sign a hooker, I'm actually throwing it at Brandon Smith. Just based on purely form, and that's what I'm a big believer in. You pick on form, and I've always been about that when it comes to rep teams. What I'll say about Harry Grant, though, is that I think he's actually become a world-class 14. And people might go, how stupid. He's one of the best young hookers in the comp. Yes, he is, but I've seen so many times, whether it be at Storm level or playing for Queensland. I remember last year where he came on and basically tore the game apart and won it for the Maroons, was that he's done it as well this year with the Storm. He will come on after 20, 25 minutes. And how many times have we seen it in that first set? He's done something, either caused a line break or a try, and just straight away on the front foot. And that takes a lot of skill, because that's him looking at the game when he's on the bench, picking out who he's going to target, doing it once he gets on the field. So the 14 role, I've been massive about this, and everyone who listens to my channel and yours as well, I've mentioned a few times, is I love the 14 role, and I think it is a specialty position. It needs to be done so well, because it can be a team's saving grace. If the Storm go off to a bad start, let's say, and then Harry Grant comes on, I feel like Harry Grant off the bench is an automatic 12-point switch. He automatically will get the Storm at least 12 points in that first 10 minutes that he's on, just because of how good he is. But I think Brandon Smith's competitive nature and his sort of old school rugby league in a way is what you need to start a game. So that's why I need Brandon Smith as my starting hooker, because if he can go, and I know that once Brandon Smith starts going, he's a bit of a terrier. Even though he's tired, if there's 20 minutes to go in the game, he'll still go. He'll go and go and go. He won't bring the finesse that Harry Grant will bring once he comes on the bench, off the bench, but that's the luxury Bellamy has at the moment. That's what Storm, for mine, should be doing. But if I have to sign someone right now for starting hooker, it's Brandon Smith. And I'm also trying to throw some money at Harry Grant as the specialist 14 and the best 14 in the world.
Yeah, the thing with me, man, like if they are able to pay unders and say they spend the rest of the career together, that combination will be all time, and like it will be oh man, it's one of those things. Like I completely understand if Smith, who looks probably the more likely to leave, and makes that decision. But yeah, obviously being a Storm fan, I hope he stays with us and takes unders. But I completely understand it. But also on the other shoe, look, Grant probably hasn't been given the opportunity like we talked about with Smith. I've changed my mind on him because he's been given time in that number 9 role. So maybe if next in a year or two, when it is just Grant there and he is given more time at 9, we can be like, okay, maybe he just needed to be able to, have those reps, being able to get used to, being in the game in that kind of situation rather than those short little stints. But I don't blame your choice, because form at the end of the day is a really good indicator of how you should make decisions. Look, and this is a good one, good fun one to end off. And you suggested this one. I thought it was a real good one. I was trying to find more like this, but I had a bit of a mind blank. So, look, Eels fan yourself. So, look, it's probably something that you've had to think about before. Look, something that gets discussed heaps is the Eels. I think we already mentioned it with Joe Manu. They're missing that strike, and particularly a strike centre. And at the moment, the centres are Opchik or Blake. Now, we've got a few little youngsters coming through there. Panisi, we've got obviously options where they could sign a strike centre. They could discuss, obviously, maybe Gaffo shifts there, or they sign Joe Manu to be a centre. There's a few options, but for them to develop in the future, to make that next leap, I do agree they need to get more strikes on the outside back, which means with Opchik or Blake, which ones do you choose? Because you've got Opchik, the more reliable centre, defensively strong, not a jump out the gym athlete, but you got Wonga Blake, who has more potential to be that strike centre, but let's just call it how it is. He hasn't been quite that, and has really, for me, even lucky to be kind of in this lineup, especially the way Niokora was defending on the edge when he was out. So if you had to choose one to be there, if they are able to get a strike centre there, are you going to stick with Opachek, or are you going to stick with Wonga Blake?
It's for this. I feel like only one of them will be in the starting side next year. Whether we can sign a strike centre or we just go, you know what, Penasini's looked the goods, and I've followed Penasini for a while now, and all during the young grades, there's been talk that he is the next big thing for us, and he is the one that's going to have a stranglehold on at least one of those centre positions for the next five or plus years. And there was a real big plan to have Jenko sort of be his role model and help him come up. That's obviously changed with what happened, and it sort of pushed us and forced us to sign Opacek and can extend and keep Wanga Blake for now. I feel like Wanga Blake's been a bit unfairly treated. I feel like he's been a victim of people on his inside as well as his winger and the defensive pattern that's been installed at the moment that was confusing him for a while there. I think it's slowly getting fixed. And I think the last few weeks, even though we have lost by some big margins, I do think Wanga Blake's been one of the better players in that, which hasn't been too hard, let's be honest, but it is what it is. Opacek's a solid player, but my thing is with Opacek, he has been around for a while now. A lot of people forget he started at the Broncos, went to the Cowboys. Yeah, he had some sort of injury concerns, but no club's ever sort of wanted to make sure they've kept him or prioritized keeping him. They've always thought, all right, yeah, let him go. We've got a youngster coming through that will take that spot. I think Opacek is one of those players. He's one of those float around players who are your top probably 25 to 30 players. He'll come in and play a few games each year when needed, and he'll be a reliable backup. He'll make his tackles, but he won't do anything too special. Wanga Blake, from a young age, when he was at the Panthers and now with Parramatta, has just had an X factor about him. And it's something that for the Eels, they need to exploit. And it's just about getting him more defense result in defense and have that correct, so to speak. And for mine, his attacking thing is there. He just needs he's a bit of a confidence player, I feel. If he was at the Storm right now, he would probably be talking about him as one of the best centers in the game. That's the sort of player he is. So I would definitely choose Wanga Blake in this situation. It's, I think, a big question about what happens on the other side. I hope they put faith in Penasini. I know we need a strike gun player, and we definitely need one, at least one or maybe two. I just think Penasini's got something special. I just need to stick solid here. We haven't stuck solid with youngsters for a while, actually. We seem to always go the experienced player or sign the experienced heads. So I'd like to see us stick solid with a couple of these youngsters who love to play footy, natural athletes. And then, yeah, unfortunately, I just think Opacek, if he's staying around, he'll be one of those fringe first graders sort of floating in and out.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, mate. It's interesting to get your views on that. I honestly thought you were probably going to lean towards Opacek. And it was probably the way I was leaning, to be honest, too. The thing with Wanga Blake, though, is, yeah, there was hype for him for reason, for good reason. Like, he has got the flair. He has got, like you said, like, he is an athlete. He's got promise. And if he was in a system like the Storm, we'll probably be talking about him as one of the better centers in the game, especially. Look, we've seen it. We always see it with the Storm, but let's go with Remus Smith only just this year, like we weren't kind of talking him among, it'd be laughable to talk about him among that conversation last year, where this year you can argue his case for being up there Dalian centre. Now, that can be just because he's had the opportunity to do that, but at the end of the day, it is to do with the situation you're in. And Wanga Blake might have not been in the situation to do that. The thing with me also with what doesn't help Wanga Blake, and you brought up his defence. Now, him and Blake Ferguson on one side has been an issue. Now, an attack, if they are rearing, they are able to connect, that is a scary prospect. But defensively, yeah, that's another story. Now, the thing is, I don't know what Blake Ferguson's situation is, but if it's them on the right side again, I'd veer towards not doing that, because it has bit them in the butt too many times. Yeah, it's interesting. It is, and it might have to do who they are able to get. So if they are able to get an absolute gun in the centres, I probably would look more for a steady option with Opacek. Now, ideally, also, it might be both of them. Like, I really like that Panisi. He is, yeah, like you said, he's got a lot of promise. Hayes Dunst is another one. He's probably another one that could maybe even fill in the role at wing as well. But ideally, say if you're able to land that guy that is a premier centre, I would think even both of them might be, at risk at losing their spot. You have Panisi as a centre and someone there, but the thing is, like, that's all hypothetical. But yeah, if I had to choose one of Topachik or Wonga Blake, I would. Wonga Blake has had his opportunity there, and I think Panisi, if you're able to develop him, he could become that strike guy. So I think I would actually veer between. I would probably give Opachik the go, but if Ferguson's not there, which is tough because Ferguson, I still think on his day is great, but he is the definition of rocks and diamonds. Yeah, but if he's not there, I prefer Wonga Blake actually there and without Ferguson than with him, because defensively they have not stacked up very well alongside each other. So it's a real interesting one to finish off. Like you can tell, it is a tough one, even though I'm not too confident with my decision. I think I've given about 3 different answers depending on the answers. But I think what we've learned from this is Parramatta Eels, the strike in the back line, there is need there. And I don't know how they're going to get it, but I think that is going to do a lot to where they get to next year in terms of contender status. We'll just finish off there. Do you think that is a fair point? Do you think is that your biggest area of concern for Parramatta, is getting a guy in the back line to be that strike option?
Yeah, 100%. They just need to sort out a couple of things. Now with Stevo's knee injury as well, he's not going to be the same player next year. So I have a feeling they might try and keep Fergo at least for one more year, just because of the Sevo injury. That's changed things up. I think Dunster's got a mortgage on one wing, so that's fine there. I think it's his time now to become an established first grader. It's just about, I think Ferguson will keep the seat warm for Sevo. Sevo, for mine, was pretty disappointing this year, so there's a bit of pressure on him.
It's pretty poor,
Yeah, he has been. It's an interesting one, which I'll dig deeper into in the off season. But I got a quick one for you actually, and I thought we'd throw a quick coaches one into this. Since we've all been on players, you're the new Brisbane team, and you're coming in next year. You've got to choose a coach. Who do you choose out of Wayne Bennett, Craig Bellamy, or Trent Robinson?
Oh, it is tough. At the end of the day, there's not a bad option. I'd actually veer. Now, the one that's been rumored is Bennett. The scary thing about Bennett is, at the end of the day, he has had great success where he's been, but that's the thing. He's been a lot of places, So I'd be concerned about that. Be concerned about kind of putting all my eggs in Wayne Bennett's basket. So I'll veer away from them. Now, Robinson and Bellamy. I'll say Robinson because I don't want Bellamy to leave. But if I had to choose one of them, I think, look, if I am taking my Storm head off, I think I would, in terms of wanting him to leave. I think Bellamy would be the guy I'd want. I think you'd also think about the talent he could bring across with him as well. And also the way he was able to kind of, you look at the situation they were in, I can't remember where they finished in before he got there, but it wasn't the best situation to be in. When Robinson went to the Roosters, even though they didn't make the 8 the year before, a lot of talent come with him that same year. Like, they had Sonny Bill, they had Ben Maloney, Michael Jennings, where even though Bellamy, like, I think the only marquee signings Bellamy has made has been Michael Crocker, and I think Xavier Coates, who's coming next season, in terms of guys that had played representative footy before going to the Storm. Like Josh Adokar wasn't a rep star, then he became one, like that. So he's going to hopefully be able to get stars brought in. And when we talk about developing for the future, he's probably going to pick up that talent early. So I think the way he's had success, the way he is kind of created that Storm culture in terms of now. Robinson's done fantastic. Don't get me wrong. He's had a lot of talent come in, but he's been able to have sustained success as well. I just think it is for me, Bellamy, we're talking about one of the best coaches we've ever seen. And Robinson has time to beat it as well. But I probably would lean towards Bellamy just to see, his 20 years worth of success, and then how it started and then how it has continued. We've gone from the big three starting at 2003. The big three's gone. And look, they just lost their first game in 21 games. Like, unreal. Where would you veer?
Different to you, let's just say that.
Yeah.
I'm surprised I'm going to be on the Robbo bandwagon for this one and say I'd sign Robbo. And purely because I just know he's done it with more than one club. And I'm not going to say there's a pot shot at Craig Bellamy because I do think he's one of, if not the greatest coach of all time for a club. I think if we are judging Bellamy off anything other than the Storm, which I think he's built up perfectly, and that's him, that's the Melbourne Storm is Craig Bellamy. So it's hard for him to then leave that and start everything again and have that up and running in a year. It just can't happen. But I think we've seen Robson do that for other sides. He's done it in England. He's done it in for the Roosters. And I just really think he would suit that style. So Bellamy, if we are judging off the other, he has obviously coached New South Wales before, and it wasn't a great record that he had. So that's the only thing we can sort of judge him off. But
it's the biggest negative of his career.
Yeah, unfortunately. So, but yeah, I love Bellamy as a coach. I think, as I said, he's up there with, if not the greatest coach of all time, especially for a one club coach. So, can't argue with the success he's had and what he's been able to continually do and build there. There's hats off to him. I just think I'd go a bit left field there and go Robbo, just because I just like his sort of style. And I think it's more so as well because he's come out and backed what he set up on the weekend. I love that. It just back it up, back up your club and really stand for what you are as a footballing coach and what you respect and think your club deserves.
Yeah, and in terms of modern day coaching, if you're trying to kind of set the standard of what modern day coaches would be like, I think you'd pick Robbo over Bellamy.
He's a bit younger as well, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And that is a factor to highly consider as well. But with Robbo, it's like he's backing up full players. He's obviously Bellamy known for his blow-ups. And I know he has changed. He's letting things slip more as he's got older. Like he kind of lets Brandon Smith and all that be who they are. And that's good. I know that has probably been a lot harder for him than it looks. So yeah, probably what I mean from that is Bellamy is more old school than Robinson. So if you're trying to create the perfect coach, you'd probably look towards Robinson because of the personalities we've got in this game. But Bellamy, but that's another positive. Bellamy, he has been able to adapt to the times, and I'm sure he'd be able to continue to do that. But yeah, it's an interesting conversation, and it's one if I probably thought about it for a bit longer, it would be I could, like I said, I am. I think either choice would be, a good decision to be made. Look, I think we'll finish up there. Really good chat, Joel. Thank you very much once again. Obviously, last minute, but hey, we got through a lot of probably topics that haven't been discussed in a while, and topics that are in the front of the media at the moment. So I think we covered a lot today. Cheers once again, and anything you want to shout out, mate? I saw you got a new logo. It looks fantastic, buddy.
Yeah, thank you. Got the logo. Like the look of that. So stay tuned. There's some big things happening in the channel at the moment. So some big announcements coming. So thanks again to all the followers and everyone that follows the page. And thanks to you for having me on, helping me get a bit more exposure. I just want to say, surely I feel like I'm polling Dally M points galore each week here. So I must be close to the top of the leaderboard, and I must be on the verge of getting my first Dally M, which I'm really proud of. So if not, there's got to be an investigation, the famous words.
Yeah, for sure, mate. I think you would have been hoping that Cleary or Travojevic were going to be rested this week. Yeah,
I
luckily.
think Turbo will. I think Turbo will be. I think there'll be some late calls there.
Yeah, man. Hey, it might be, actually, I think, we'll have to start talking about the Dally M shortly. Obviously, they do the award ceremony the grand final week, where it used to be the first week after the regular season, I think. I don't know which one I prefer, but that's a topic for another day, I should say. Thank you once again, Joel, and I'll catch you guys all next week. Cheers.